Welcome to today's portion of the Viking Portable World Bible. The Buddhist. Buddhist scriptures from early Buddhist books. The foundation of the kingdom of righteousness. The first sermon ascribed to Gautama Buddha. And the Blessed One thus addressed the 5 monks. There are 2 extremes, monks, which he who has giver. Up the world ought to avoid. I think they mixed that one up. What are these 2 extremes? A life given to pleasures, devoted to pleasures and lusts? This is degrading, sensual, vulgar, ignoble, and profitless. And a life given to mortifications? This is painful, ignoble, and profitless. By avoiding these 2 extremes, monks, the Tathagata has gained the knowledge of the middle path, which leads to insight, which leads to wisdom, which conduces to calm, to knowledge, to Sambodhi, supreme enlightenment, to nirvana. Which, monks, is this middle path, the knowledge of which the Tathagata has gained, which leads to insight, which leads to wisdom, which conduces to calm, to knowledge, to Sambodhi, to nirvana? It is the noble Eightfold Path, namely right views, right intent, right speech, right conduct, right means of livelihood, right endeavor, right mindfulness, right meditation. So it's like yoga is an eightfold path. This, monks, is the middle path, the knowledge of which the Tathagata, to which the Tathaga has gained, which leads to insight, which leads to wisdom, which conduces to calm, to knowledge, to perfect enlightenment, to nirvana. This, monks, is the noble truth of suffering. Birth is suffering, decay is suffering, death is suffering. Discontent, really, more than suffering. Presence of objects we hate is suffering. Separation from objects we love is suffering. Not to obtain what we desire is suffering. In brief, the 5 aggregates which spring from grasping, they are painful. So there's a difference between pain and suffering. This, monks, is the noble truth concerning the origin of suffering. Verily originates in that craving which causes the renewal of becomings, is accompanied by sensual delight, and seeks satisfaction now here, now there, and that is to say, craving for pleasures, craving for becoming, craving for not becoming. This, monks, is the noble truth concerning the cessation of suffering. Verily it is passionless, cessation without remainder of this very craving, the laying aside of, the giving up of, the being free from, the harboring no longer of, this craving. This, monks, is the noble truth concerning the path which leads to the cessation of suffering. Verily it is this noble eightfold path, that is to say, right views, right intent, right speech, right conduct, right means of livelihood, right endeavor, right mindfulness, and right meditation. The 9 Incapabilities, words ascribed to Gautama Buddha. The brother who is Arahant, teacher stage, I guess, in whom the intoxicants are destroyed, who has lived the life, who has done his task, who has laid low his burden, who has attained salvation, who has utterly destroyed the fetter of rebirth, who is emancipated by the true gnosis. He is incapable of perceiving 9 things. He is incapable of deliberately depriving a living creature of life. He is incapable of taking what is not given so that it constitutes death. He is incapable he is incapable of sexual impurity. He is incapable of deliberately telling lies. He is incapable of laying up treasure for indulgence and worldly pleasure, as he used to do in the life of the house. He is incapable of taking a wrong course through partiality. He is incapable of taking a wrong course through hate. He is incapable of taking a wrong course through stupidity. He is incapable of taking a wrong course through fear. These 9 things the Arahant, in whom the mental intoxicants are destroyed, who has lived the life, whose task is done, whose burden is laid low, who has attained salvation, who has utterly destroyed the fetter of becoming, who is emancipated by the true gnosis, is incapable of perpetrating. Okay. Of course they're capable of perpetuating. The Aryan Eightfold Path. The Exalted One said, and what? Behkus is the Aryan truth, considering the way that leads to the cessation of ill, that is that Aryan Eightfold Path, to wit, right view, right separation, right speech, right doing, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right rapture. And what? Behkus is right view, knowledge. Behkus, about ill, knowledge about becoming, to be of ill, knowledge about the cessation of ill, knowledge about the way that leads to the cessation of ill. This is what is called right view, and what Behkus is right aspiration. The aspiration towards renunciation, the aspiration towards benevolence, the aspiration towards kindness. This is what is called right aspiration. And what Behkus is right speech? Abstaining from lying, slander, abuse, and idle talk. This is what is called right speech. And what Behkus is right doing? Abstaining from taking life, taking what is not given, from carnal indulgence. This is what is called right doing. And what Behkus is right livelihood? Herein, O Behkus, the Aryan discipline, having put away wrong livelihood, supports himself by right livelihood. And what Behkus is right effort? Herein, O Behkus, a brother makes effort in bringing forth what that evil and bad states have not arisen within him, may not arise. To that end he stirs up energy, he grips and forces his mind, that he may put away evil and bad states that have arisen within him. He puts forth will, he makes effort, he stirs up energy, he grips and forces his mind, that good states which have not arisen may arise. He puts forth will, he makes effort, he stirs up energy, he grips and forces his mind, that good states which have arisen may persist, may not grow blurred, may multiply, grow abundant, develop, and come to perfection. He puts forth will, he makes effort, he stirs up energy. He grips and forces his mind. This is what is called right effort. And what Behkus is right mindfulness? Herein, O Behkus, a brother, as to the body, continues to look upon the body, and he remains ardent, self-possessed, and mindful, having overcome both hankering and the dejection common in the world. And in the same way as to feelings, thoughts, and ideas, he so looks upon each, that he remains ardent, self-possessed, and mindful, having overcome the hankering and the dejection that is common in the world. This is what is called right mindfulness. And I might also add, doing things in the name of God, according to the principles, during, and dedicating, and reaffirming that it was for, after. And what, O Behkus, is right rapture? Herein, O Behkus, a brother, aloof from sensuous appetites, aloof from evil ideas, enters into and abides in the first jhana, wherein there is cogitation and deliberation, which is born of solitude and deliberation. He enters into and abides in the second jhana, which is self-evoked, born of concentration, full of joy and ease, and that set free from cogigation and deliberation, the mind grows calm and sure, dwelling on high, and further disenchanted with joy, he abides calmly, contemplative, while mindful and self-possessed. He feels in his body that case whereof Aryans declare, he that is calmly contemplative and aware, he dwelleth at ease. So does he enter into and abide in the third jhana. And further, by putting aside ease and putting aside malaise and putting away, by the passing away of the happiness and of the melancholy he used to feel, he enters into and abides in the fourth jhana, rapture of utter purity, of mindfulness and equanimity, wherein neither ease is felt nor any ill. This is what is called right rapture. So, be raptured in one's states, but not to alleviate or uplift. Have higher motivations. This, bhikkhus, is the Aryan truth concerning the way leading to the cessation of ill. Questions which tend not to edification. Thus have I heard. On a certain occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savate in Jetavana Monastery and in Anathapindika's park. Now it happened to the venerable Malukya Putta, being in seclusion and plunged in meditation, that a consideration presented itself to his mind. Then the venerable Malukya Putta arose at eventide from his seclusion, and drew near to where the Blessed One was, and having drawn near and greeted the Blessed One, he sat down respectively at one side, and seated respectively at one side, the venerable Malukya Putta spoke to the Blessed One as followed. Reverend Sir, it happened to me, as I was just now in seclusion and plunged in meditation, that a consideration presented itself to my mind as follows. These theories which the Blessed One has left unelucidated has set aside and rejected that the world is eternal, that the world is not eternal, that the saint neither exists nor does not exist after death, that the Blessed One does not elucidate to me. I will draw near to the Blessed One and inquire of him concerning this matter. If the Blessed One will elucidate them to me, in that case will I lead righteous life under the Blessed One. If the Blessed One will not elucidate them, I will abandon religious training and return to the lower life of a layman. Now, remember, one of the things that they did with the Buddha was they put him into atheistic philosopher sort of framework, and there's evidence that this isn't exactly what was going on with him, but obviously there's no religion for a mere philosopher. The religious life, O Malunkyaputta, does not depend on the dogma that the world is eternal, nor on the dogma that the world is not eternal. Whether the dogma obtain Malunkyaputta, that the world is eternal, or that the world is not eternal, there still remains birth, old age, death, sorrow, lamentation, misery, grief, and despair, for the extinction of which, in the present life, I am prescribing. Accordingly, Malunkyaputta, bear always in mind what it is that I have not elucidated, and what is that I have elucidated, and what, Malunkyaputta, have I not elucidated. I have not elucidated, Malunkyaputta, that the world is eternal. I have not elucidated that the world is not eternal. I have not elucidated that the saint neither exists nor does not exist after death. And why, Malunkyaputta, have I not elucidated this? Because, Malunkyaputta, this profits not, nor has to do with the fundamentals of religion, nor tends to aversion, absence of passion, cessation, quiescence, the supernatural faculty, supreme wisdom, and nirvana. Therefore, I have not elucidated it. Because primarily is about that connection to life in which we live. And what, Malunkyaputta, have I elucidated? Misery, Malunkyaputta, have I elucidated? The origin of misery, have I elucidated? The cessation of misery, have I elucidated? And the path leading to the cessation of misery, have I elucidated? And why, Malunkyaputta, have I elucidated this? Because, Malunkyaputta, this does profit, has to do with the fundamentals of religion, and tends to aversion, absence of pain, cessation, quiescence, knowledge, supreme wisdom, and nirvana. Therefore have I elucidated it. Accordingly, Malunkyaputta, bear always in mind what it is that I have not elucidated, and what it is that I have elucidated. And thus spake the Blessed One, and delighted the venerable Malunkyaputta applauded the speech of the Blessed One. Discussion of dependent origin. And thus I've heard, on a certain occasion, that the Blessed One was dwelling among the Kurus, where there was the Kuru town named Kamasadama. Then drew the venerable Ananda to where the Blessed One was, and having drawn near and greeted the Blessed One, he sat down respectively at one side, and seated respectively at one side, the venerable Ananda spoke to the Blessed One as follows: "O wonderful, Reverend Sir. O marvelous is it, Reverend Sir. How profound, Reverend Sir, is dependent origin, and how profound an appearance. To me, nevertheless, is as clear can be. O Ananda, say not so. O Ananda, say not so. Profound Ananda is dependent origination, and profound of appearance. It is through not understanding this doctrine, Ananda, through not penetrating it, that thus mankind is like an entangled warp, or to an ensnarled web, or to munja grass, and babaja grass, and fails to extricate itself from punishment, suffering, perdition, rebirth. Ananda, if it be asked, do old age and death depend on anything? The reply should be, old age and death depend on birth. Ananda, if it be asked, does birth depend on anything? The reply should be, birth depends on existence. Ananda, if it be asked, does existence depend on anything? The reply should be, existence depends on attachment. Ananda, if it be asked, does attachment depend on anything? The reply should be, attachment depends on desire. Ananda, if it be asked, does desire depend on anything? The reply should be, desire depends on sensation. Ananda, if it be asked, does sensation depend on anything? The reply should be, sensation depends on contact. Ananda, if it be asked, does contact depend on anything? The reply should be, contact depends on the mental and physical phenomena. Ananda, if it be asked, do the mental and physical phenomena depend on anything? The reply should be, the mental and physical phenomena depend on consciousness. Ananda, if it be asked, does consciousness depend on anything? The reply should be, consciousness depends on the mental and physical phenomena. Thus, Ananda, on the mental and physical phenomena depends consciousness. On consciousness depends the mental and physical phenomena. On the mental and physical phenomena depends contact. On contact depends sensation. On sensation depends desire. On desire depends attachment. On attachment depends existence. On existence depends birth. On birth depends old age and death, sorrow, lamentation, grief, misery, and despair. Misery, grief, and despair. Thus does the entire aggregation of misery arise. So, follow causes back to its source. Don't just say, Think to yourself, I must have had a previous life to explain what's going on. If you follow it in this life, you can either find the explanation or find that, it's more reasonable to think that the cause of this life is something that was put into this life. On theology. Then the young Brahmana Vasetta and the young Brahmana Bharadvaja went on to the place where the Exalted One was, and when they had come there, they exchanged with the Exalted One the greetings and compliments of politeness and courtesy, and sat down beside him. And while they were thus seated, the young Brahmana Vasetta said to the Exalted One, As we, Gautama, were talking exercise and walking up and down, there sprang up a conversation between us, on which was the right path, and which the false. Regarding this matter, Gautama, there is a strife, a dispute, a difference of opinion between us, wherein then, O Vasita, is there a strife, a dispute, a difference of opinion between you, concerning the truth path and the false, Gautama? Various Brahmanas, Gautama, teach various paths. Are all those saving paths? Are they all paths which lead him, who acts according to them, into a state of union with Brahma? Vasita, is there a single one of the Brahmanas versed in the 3 Vedas who has ever seen Brahma face to face? No, indeed, Gautama. Well then, Vasita, those ancient rishis of the Brahmanas, versed in the 3 Vedas, the authors of the verses, the utterers of the verses, whose ancient form of words, so chanted, uttered or composed, these Brahmanas of today chant over again, or repeat, intoning, or reciting exactly as has been intoned or recited. Did even they speak thus, saying, we know it, we have seen it, where Brahma is, whence Brahma is, whither Brahma is? Not so, Gautama. Then you say, Vasita, that none of the Brahmanas are of their teachers, are of their peoples, even up to the 7th generation has ever seen Brahma face to face, and that even the rishis of old, the authors and utterers of the verses, of the ancient forms of the words, which the Brahmanas of today so carefully intone and recite precisely as they have been handed down, even they did not pretend to know or to have seen where or whence or whither Brahma is, so that Brahmanas versed in the 3 Vedas have forsooth said thus, what we know not, what we have not seen, to a state of union. With that we can show the way and can say, this is the straight path. This is the direct way which makes for salvation, and leads him who acts according to it into a state of union with Brahma. Now, what think you, Vasetta? Does it not follow, this being so, that the talk of the Brahmanas versed, though they be in the 3 Vedas, turns out to be foolish talk? In sooth, Gautama, that being so, it follows that the talk of the Brahmanas versed in the 3 Vedas is foolish talk. So, there's a difference between belief, faith, and knowledge. If you believe, believe, and say that you believe. Faith is some reasoning attached, and you should have some reasoning attached And hopefully it's something more than my parents or this dude in charge over here. Hopefully you have more than that. In some matters, a little bit of knowledge here, a little bit of faith here, a lot of belief here. That's how the mundane world works too. So many speak of science, and it's not even theory anymore, a lot of what people think is science. The fall and rise of social behavior. Words ascribed to Gautama Buddha. When poverty has become rife, a certain man took that which others had not given him. What people call by theft, him they caught, and brought before the king, saying, "This man, O king, has taken that which was not given him, and that is theft." Thereupon the king spoke thus to the man, "Is it true, Sirrah, that thou hast taken what no man give thee, hast committed what men call theft?" "It is true, O king." "But why? O king, I have nothing to keep me alive." Then the king bestowed wealth on that man, saying, "With this wealth, Sirrah, do thou both keep thyself alive, maintain thy parents, maintain children and wife, carry on thy business, and keep up with such alms for holy men, as such be of value in the realms above, heavenly gifts, the result whereof shall be happiness here and rebirth in the heavenly worlds." 1% of the gross national domestic product of America would end poverty here. But we're so concerned about giving 84% of the taxes as direct or indirect or conditional and unconditional welfare to the rich that we can't take care of the poor. And there's also, the difference. There's a difference between somebody forced, the mob says, "You got to do this. We have your family." Doesn't matter. The person can get 20, 30 years in prison for, what they were forced to do. What poverty forced them to do. There's a difference between a theft or a prostitute that does it to get drugs and one who's starving to death. A basic income actually results in communities producing more. But we don't have to go that far. We can just say those who need it and focus on that. Minimize the salary of politicians. "Even so, O king," replied the man. "Now another man, brethren, took by theft what was not given him. Him they caught and brought before the king, the anointed Kshatriya, and told him, saying," he was of the warrior or ruling class, and told him, saying, "This man of king has taken by theft what was not given him." And the king spoke, and did even as he had spoke and done to the former man. Now men heard, brethren, that to them who had taken by theft what was not given them, the king was giving wealth. And hearing, they thought, "Let us take by theft what has not been given us." Now a certain man did so, and they caught him and charged before the king, the anointed Kshatriya, who as before asked him why he had stolen. "Because, O king, I cannot maintain myself." Then the king thought, "If I bestow wealth on any one soever who is taken by theft what was not given him, there will be hereby an increase of this stealing. Let me now put a final stop to this. Inflict, condign, punishment on him, having his head cut off." And he bade his men, saying, "Now look ye, bind this man's arms behind him with a strong rope and tight knot, shave his head bald, lead him around with a harsh-sounding drum from road to road, from crossways to crossways, take him out by the southern gate, and to the south of the town put a final stop to this, inflict on him the utmost penalty, cut off his head." "Even so, O king," answered the men, and carried out his commands. Now men heard, brethren, that they who took by theft what was not given them were thus put to death. And hearing, they thought, "Let us now have sharp swords made ready for ourselves. And then, from whom we take what is not given us, what they call theft, let us put a final stop to them, inflict on them the uttermost penalty, and cut their heads off. When they gat themselves sharp swords, and came forth to sack village and town and city, and to work highway robbery, and them whom they robbed they made an end of, cutting off their heads. Thus, brethren, from goods not being bestowed on the destitute, poverty grew rife, and from poverty growing rife, stealing increased, and from the spread of stealing, violence grew apace. From the growth of violence, the destruction of life became common. From the frequency of murder, both the span of life and those beings and their comeliness also wasted away, so that of humans, whose span of life was 80,000 years, the sons lived but 40,000 years. Among the humans of the latter span of life, brethren, a certain man took by theft what was not given him, and even as those others was accused before the king and questioned if it was true that he had stolen. Nay, O king, he replied, thus deliberately telling a lie, and thus from goods not being bestowed on the destitute, poverty grew rife, stealing, violence, murder, until lying grew common. And from lying growing common, both the span of life and those beings and the comeliness of them wasted away, so that of humans, whose span of life was 40,000 years, the sons lived but 20,000 years. Now, among humans of later lifespan, a certain man took by theft what was not given him. Him a certain man reported to the king, the anointed Kshatriya, saying, such and such a man, O king, is taken by theft what was not given him, thus speaking evil of him. The fall and rise of social behavior should continue shortly.